Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, so let's get started. We have a jam-packed session, so I want to kind of go over the agenda and also kind of just get the show started. So I'm Yushen Wen. I'm Program Manager in Azure Networking. And today's session, we're going to discuss about virtual appliances in Azure. So these are third-party virtual appliances running on the Azure platform. And given I'm from the networking side, so the key focus today will be on sort of the networking virtual appliances rather than general appliances. And there will be a lot more out there, but today we're going to focus on network. So this is the agenda today. So as you can see, I'm going to go over a little bit very quickly regarding what is virtual appliances, what Azure is doing to help partners onboard their virtual appliances onto Azure platform, and why, from the customer perspective, why you would care, and go over a little bit of the platform capability. But as you can see, the majority of today's agenda is that we invited a set of our ecosystem partners to be on stage showcasing their virtual appliances running on Azure. And definitely one thing to say is that this is not an exhaustive list, but then we are working closely with the partners on today's agenda, and also several others that couldn't make it today, and we just couldn't include everybody in the session. Okay, so what is network virtual appliances? So virtual appliances really just virtual machines performing certain functionality, and in this case, network functionality, right? Such as firewall, IDS, IPS, WAN optimization, or there may be stuff running as load balancer, and definitely a lot of the security-focused appliances, right? One trend that we have been seeing is that more and more, a lot of the virtual appliances, actually one appliance performs several functionality. I think half of the stuff listed here, actually, they can all do VPN, they can all do certain part of the firewall functionality. But then, I mean, most of the names that you recognize, they kind of have a little bit of affinity to one thing than the other. So we kind of did a little bit of the categorization, just kind of to segment and to focus on different part of the functionality. So one thing to note is that most of this appliance platform actually runs on Linux and FreeBSD. So I want to take this opportunity to highlight that from the Azure perspective, we are actually open to all platforms. And overall, from the platform side of things, we're trying to make Linux, FreeBSD, all the non-Windows platform also as first-class citizen on the Azure platform. So right now, especially for FreeBSD, this is actually kind of a new thing. From hypervisor perspective, FreeBSD has already been supported. But I think most of you may know FreeBSD is actually not highlighted as a supported platform, and we're going to change that. And definitely from the appliance perspective, we're going to onboard several of the FreeBSD-based appliances. Now, why do you want virtual appliances in Azure? So we've been talking about bring your own networks into Azure. And definitely virtual appliances is actually part of your on-premises network. They run as physical form factor. Some may be in a virtual edition. Onto Azure, everything from the customer has to be run as virtual machine. And most appliance vendors actually already have virtual edition of their appliances running either on Hyper-V or on some other hypervisor platform. So the goal here is that we are actually working with the appliance vendor, adapting to Azure platform running on Hyper-V that Microsoft Azure is actually using. And of course, adapting to the networking functionality. So you have multi-NIC, there's some may need forwarding and routing, all those kind of things to run on Azure. And even though Microsoft will provide some of the functionality either in the form of platform capability, platform features, or even Windows Server as a virtual machine. But we do understand that from your perspective, whatever you run on premises, actually, if we can enable you to run the same thing in the cloud, the consistency of management and also you don't need to do another training for your IT step. That's actually where we're coming from. Really bring your own network, bring your own appliances, bring your own workload into Azure. Either you run completely in Azure or in a hybrid fashion. And finally, one thing I do want to address is that some of you may be thinking about, yes, Microsoft Azure is running hypervisor. So I get a virtual appliance image. Can I just take the image and run on Azure? Unfortunately, there are some constraints that just because you run on Hyper-V doesn't necessarily mean it'll run well on Azure. So what we're working with partner is that we're onboarding partner virtual appliance images via the Azure Certified program. So from the customer side, you can go to the portal, you can search the Azure Marketplace. That's the supported way of getting virtual appliances running in Azure. So just one thing to know about that. Oops. Oh, sorry. Transition is a little bit slow here. Okay, there. So I'm not going to go over this slide. So basically, throughout the week, we have several Azure networking sessions talking about the new networking functionality that actually we are releasing in this Ignite. One thing to highlight is we finally have user-defined routes. This is the platform capability to let you define routing table to direct your traffic either in and out of the Azure data center or across subnet inside of Azure data center. So that particular capability enables a new range of virtual appliances such as firewall, gateway, VPN devices to run in Azure. So I do want to highlight that. And we have a session tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Actually, we'll drill down into some of this capability. So I think we have a 9 o'clock talking about user-defined route and virtual network security. And we have another session at 3 o'clock regarding the hybrid part of the capability. Okay, so the next 3 slides, I'm just going to flash through the key scenario we're focusing on today. So application delivery controller or load balancer. So this is very straightforward. You have internet, you have workload coming either from the internet or from your private side, either from on-premises into Azure. And ADC or load balancer basically direct the traffic based on the policy rule that you specify, whether you are doing load balancing or you are directing traffic based on the application or based on layer 7, based on content and all those kind of stuff. And we have a list of partners that some already onboarded into Azure Marketplace, and several of them is actually going to showcase their virtual appliances today. And the second scenario we're highlighting is, okay. The second scenario we're highlighting is WAN optimization. I'm going to stay closer since the clicker is not working very well. The second scenario we're highlighting is WAN optimization. So WAN optimization is actually a very interesting category of appliances because it works in a truly hybrid fashion, right? So they are optimizing your WAN traffic storage application or other application, HTTP level kind of workload. Typically, they will have one appliance, either virtual or physical on-premises, and another head-end in the cloud. And they work together to compress or optimize the traffic. And Riverbed is with us today to showcase Riverbed Steelhead running both on-prem and in Azure, and also Steel Central to provide a good showcasing of the telemetry or analytic. Now, the last scenario is actually the new one that we really are highlighting in this in this Ignite. Security appliances such as firewall, IDS, IPS. Customers cannot do this before because we did not have the platform forwarding routing functionality. Now, with user-defined routes, customer can actually direct the traffic. You can say, I can set a default route. Any traffic that's not flowing between my virtual machine actually goes through the inspection devices, such as firewall, IDS, IPS. So you can do that now. Now, that's it. So for the next, I guess, 50-some minutes, we'll invite partners to be on stage showcasing their virtual appliances. So I do want to set a little bit of the ground rule because we have many partners that will be on stage. So I'm going to ask you guys to hold up your question till the end, and we ask all the partners to stay here so you can ask questions individually to the appliance vendors of choice here. And the second thing is, some of the appliances here are already onboarded to Azure, and some are actually in the process of getting onboarded. Right? For example, we just released the routing feature, and most of the firewall vendor, they have to build on top of the routing feature before and do the testing, making sure everything runs well. So you should expect to see basically in the next couple of months, some of these vendors will have their virtual appliances popping up in Azure Marketplace. So just want to set the right expectation here. So we're going to start out talking about application delivery controller and load balancer. And so for the first one, we're inviting Citrix to be on stage to showcase their stuff. Carl.
Thank you, Yushan. Good morning, everyone. Okay. Just want to make sure you could hear me. Vijay, come on up and we'll get started here. As Yushan said, we are an application delivery controller, NetScaler. Many of you probably know us. It's funny, as I meet people, Citrix, they go, oh, GoToMeeting, which is obviously one of our offerings. They see it on TV and whatnot. Or they think the virtualization, the XenApp and XenDesktop. We also have a large networking division. We will also be working on WAN optimization, but we're going to talk briefly about NetScaler today. As Yushan mentioned, a lot of the features and functionality that many of us will show, we do that. One thing that we're not going to show today that I did want to highlight is our NetScaler Gateway, which sits in front of XenApp and XenDesktop to do gateway functionality for that, provide secure, granular control to deliver those applications. I was going to go 25 minutes just to make Yushan sweat, but I'll not do that. We're going to bring Vijay up, and he's going to show you a demo, not on the gateway functionality, but sort of the traditional functionality that we're doing as an ADC in load balancing. He'll talk about his topology here for a second. One thing I did want to comment on that Yushan did mention is where we are as far as a marketplace. If you go today to the marketplace, we're not there. We're literally, I think a lot of my vendor brethren here, we're sitting in some staging servers waiting to publish. So we're right there. So we won't be months, we should be days. So please keep a lookout for us in the marketplace. And with that, I will turn it over to Vijay and let him go.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So we are able to deploy NetScaler VPX on Azure. And here's a demo topology that we have. We have a highly available set of NetScalers running within a cloud service. So, we have a bunch of different pools of servers sitting on the back. So we're going to do the load balancing of the servers and also provide additional functionality as an application delivery controller. So let me switch to my screen. Okay, there you go. So this is one of the NetScalers running in Azure. This is the management portal from Azure. And you can see we have two NetScalers running in a highly available pair. And let me go to the dashboard of a NetScaler. This is the current dashboard. I'm just connecting to the cloud service IP, and which is redirected to the primary NetScaler. So you have the basic configuration. It's pretty simple and to use, and there's a lot of configuration options here. As you can see, different categories of configuration that you can do. Traffic management being one of the most basic ones, and then we can get into advanced features such as access gateway, application firewalling, and security. A lot of security also is built in feature set. So I'll just show you a quick scenario of a user accessing some resources on the Azure environment. So, and I'll talk about the features. So assuming there is an enterprise customer, a client actually trying to get some resources from the Azure cloud, and there's an application delivery controller sitting in front. So the client actually connects to the application delivery controller on a virtual IP. And what we do is, let's say he's trying to access application D. Okay, so he has specified that in the URL, and then as soon as you enter, so the couple of things happening here. Okay, first thing, you can see that's a HTTPS page. That means NetScaler is actually doing SSL offloading. So you can manage all your certificates, and instead of having it on the servers, you can actually set everything on the NetScaler to offload your SSL offloading. So what we have also done is we have also redirected the user to an authentication page on NetScaler. So that is one more feature. So what NetScaler can do is we provide authentication, auditing, and authorizations for users' access of secure resources. And with authentication, what you can set up in NetScaler is you can actually set up external authentication with Active Directory using LDAP, TACACS, and Radius servers. We support a lot more of them. So you have a centralized management of security as well. So let me go ahead and provide some credentials. And now you're exposed to the web servers, right? So there's another thing happening here, which I wanted to focus on. So I'm specifying application D, right? So the URL FQDN is remaining the same. So what's happening here is we also do something called content switching. So based on the request that the client is sending, we can do real-time analysis of the request and redirect the user to a particular resource pool or server set. So that, and we can also do it based on the URL request, the body content, or the cookies, and much more. And this is accomplished by using our infrastructure, config infra, and also the policy infrastructure. The way the policy infrastructure works is you provide some policies, and if the policy is hit, then you take an action based on the policy. So what we can do is we can configure we have an extensive infrastructure to create such policies and actions, and you can pretty much make it very flexible to your needs. So you can go ahead with that as well. And then, of course, let's say we're going to another server. Let's say we're going to application A on the same FQDN, right? So this is a basic load balancing functionality that Netscaler can provide as well. So we can go to different pools of servers. We'll be sending it to a different server. Okay, so I think it's 1 second delay. So here what's happening is with the basic load balancing, Netscaler can also do advanced monitoring of the backend servers. So you can do basic monitoring with TCP probes, or you can do HTTP probes, or you can also make your custom monitors to ensure that the servers are up and running, the health of the servers are good. Are they part of the load balancing set, or should they be removed or excluded from the set? So you have a lot of functionality built around that. And then let me show you quickly on the Netscaler front. So we do other functionality as well. For example, on the application firewalling as well, which can protect your servers from SQL injection or cross-site scripting. And so you can configure that as well. So it has very wide security features as well. And as Carl was mentioning about Access Gateway, we can also provide SSL connectivity to the users so that they can access the resources on the backend in a secured fashion. And this one is a highly available pair. It's actually we can deploy Netscalers in an active-active or an active standby. And also you can take advantage of the availability set that Azure offers so that they are deployed across different fault zones. So that way you make sure that it's always up when they're upgrading their environment and so on and so forth. And to add to that, we also have an extensive API with Nitro for automation. So you can actually use the automation API to automate a lot of your configuration of Netscaler and dynamically change configuration. And you can do SNMP polling to get some analytics. And we have a dashboard as well, which you could use. And to add to that, you can also use your PowerShell, Azure PowerShell, to actually deploy the Netscalers and manage images and so on and so forth. So it's a pretty comprehensive and flexible appliance, and can adapt to any of the needs that you guys have. So I think I'll conclude there. Thanks, Yushan.
Thank you, Vijay. So for next one, sorry. Yeah, let Greg from F5 will be showcasing F5 Big IP in Azure. Oops. Next one.
Can everybody hear me? Pretty good? Great, thank you. So to start off with, basically everything you just saw, and we'll continue on from there. I don't want to do too many slides. I'm actually going to do just one slide if I could. And get rid of the clicker here. Bear with me. Pass past that. Come on. Thank you. So really, here's just our one marketing slide. All I really want to point out when we talk about this is it's regardless of whether you're using the Big IP, and hopefully everybody's familiar with F5 and the Big IP, but whether you're using the Big IP for a virtual edition or you're using our 8U Viprion gigantic chassis, the look, the feel, the functionality, the feature set, it's the same. So we brought that as well. We're bringing it up into Azure, and as Yushan said, it's not as easy as it would seem. It's not just bringing a VE and loading it up there, but we're getting very close. So we're actually in early access testing right now. We will be going live very soon, hopefully. So what I wanted to do, though, is basically go through the demo, talk about a few different scenarios that we're going to talk about or do, and talk about our functions as we go through it. So let's look at the scenario. So here's our environment. This is our demo environment. So currently right now we have our on-premise data center, and we have basically an application, a web farm on-premise. In addition to that, we have in the East US Azure region, we have that application as well. So we have a copy of that. You also notice that we're using the big IP to do an IPsec tunnel. So we're on-premise between big IP East and on-premise. In addition to that, Western Europe, we have another copy of the application. So what we're going to do on each of these sites, we have literally one big IP virtual edition managing all the different functions. Now, we always recommend you deploy them in a pair. So you're doing an HA pair. You do that up in Azure. You do that on-prem. But what I want to point out is the fact that you can actually do all this functionality with one device. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do GTM. That's our global load balancing mechanism module. We have LTM, which is our traditional local traffic manager load balancing. We have APM, which is our pre-authentication single sign-on federation module as well. In addition to that, we have ASM, and ASM is our application security module. And what that does is that's our layer 7, that's our WAF, our firewall. So right now we have that running in all the environments. So what I want to do is basically take you guys for a little tour around the globe. Let's see how we do here. So I'm going to switch over. There we go. Log into the big IP. All right, to start with, so here we are in Azure. So you notice once again I have a total of 3 VMs for each environment and the big IP. These are all running in basically just 2 cloud services. So our big IP is doing all the load balancing and all the traffic management for the cloud services in each region. And what I am logged into right now is actually the Cloud East. So this is Azure East. This is the big IP run up in Azure, or one of the big IPs. And what I'm going to do is, to help guide us along, is I'm going to pull up our pool of load balancers. So once again, just like we do local traffic manager and we have pools of backend servers, this is our pool of actual big IP servers. So we're load balancing across the globe all our big IPs, which are then load balancing all the applications underneath them. So to give us a little tour, I'm going to start off, level set us. I'm going to lock down some of these guys. All right. And this is a live site, so anybody in the audience that wants to play around with this, by all means, you can join in the fun. It's testf5demo.net, or test.f5demo.net, and you'll notice if you do put in HTTP, it will automatically redirect you to HTTPS, and we are doing the SSL offload. So this is our login screen. So I'm going to log in. Let's take a look. And there we go. And as you will notice, we are communicating and directed to our on-premise environment. Pretty straightforward. This is typically what we do historically. All right, so close out of there. Disable East. Let's go to Europe. All right, so now we logged back in again, and now I'm actually connecting to the Azure cloud in Europe. This is Western Europe in the Netherlands. The thing you'll notice now in our scene here, or excuse me, our diagram, is we don't have any authentication, any AD, or anything that's going on up in Azure. It's all being handled on-prem. So now, if you're in the East Coast, once again, we have that IPsec tunnel. So we have a number of options. We can do things like basically NTLM off, so pre-auth to AD directly across the wire through the tunnel. We can do authorizations, things like that, multi-factor auth. But in Europe, we don't have that option. So what we're doing here in this case is we're actually using SAML Federation. So because we're using SAML Federation, it gives us the ability to do other things like that. So we can actually federate to other environments. So now the same user who's logged into Cloud Europe is now pulling up and connecting directly to, drumroll please, Office 365. So a single sign-on to Office 365. One time. Now, of course, this could be Office 365. This could be Salesforce. This could be somebody else. This could be another cloud provider. if we're up in the clouds, and we are, and all our major providers are getting up there. Okay. I'll kill Europe. Something happened there. We're going to come back to the world. All right, so now let's take a look, and we should go back to the east. The important thing to note here is, once again, the goal is, when we're talking about hybrid deployments and things like this for HA, for just scaling out, the goal is to make sure that our end users, the consumers coming in, they don't have to do anything different. They don't see anything different. The whole point is this is a single seamless experience for them. So once again, log it in just like I did before, same user. And if everything goes right, now you'll notice the little glowing green guy over there in the corner. Now we're back in Azure East. Same thing. And once again, single sign-on, back to Office 365. So that's using, once again, we're using LTM, we're using GTM, which is our Global Traffic Manager. We're using APM for pre-authentication, single sign-on, federation. In addition, excuse me, we also have ASM installed on all these big IPs. So we actually have our WAF running as well. So I'm going to click on a test page here. It's not going to show too much other than to say basically I've been blocked. This is really just to show you that. I'm not kidding you when I say it. Let's take a look and see. And you'll notice right off the bat that I have been blocked out. And there is my WAF basically telling me. And essentially what it's telling me when we get down to here is that I have an illegal file type. Basically, I've restricted, just for the sake of a demo, that you can only access, or you cannot access a text file. Real simple, but it kind of gives you the idea of what ASM can do for you. So really, that's pretty straightforward. We're coming out. We're in early access, as I said. We're coming out in hopefully soon. I'll leave it at that. If you are interested, by all means, certainly reach out to us. Come down to the booth, have a conversation. And with that, I'm going to leave it to there. Thank you very much.
Okay, so for the next one, we're going to talk about WAN optimization, and we have Judy, Brad, and Paco from Riverbed to showcase their Riverbed appliances.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you so much. So I'm Judy Merkin. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we have to show here today. This thing's, you weren't kidding when it's being a little difficult. So I'm the director of the Riverbed and Microsoft Alliance. Microsoft and Riverbed have been working together for over a decade. I don't know, especially on Azure, we've been tightly aligned. As many of you saw back in WPC of 2014, we were one of the very first adopters with 4 other companies to adopt Azure and to become certified on Azure. Our solutions have been working on Azure for a long time, and with our 26,000 joint customers with Microsoft, we're bringing all of our Azure solutions to market together. We are the recognized leader in WAN optimization with over 50% of market share and the ability to provide the best visibility, optimization, and control for the hybrid enterprise. We're bringing these solutions to our customers. So we're very excited to show you some of these items and show you what some of the successes that all these customers are working on with us today. With the strength of our company, we've brought together 2 of our product families, Steelhead and Steel Central, to show you this whole end-to-end experience, how to bring application performance management, network performance management, and then all the visibility optimization control that customers could want to give themselves the best user experience, best diagnostics, best telemetry, and the fastest utilization of their infrastructure. So let me bring up Brad and Pecco. We're going to be showcasing here 2 Azure virtual appliances. Our Riverbed Steelhead, which we've been talking about. Many of you know. I know we've got a lot of customers. I can see many of them here already. And our Riverbed Steel Central. So these items, Steel Central is right now finalizing its last bits of certification. But you will find these in the certified Azure Marketplace. And we're here in booth 261. And feel free to stop by where we can help you with any questions. Pecco.
Thanks, Judy. So, where's the clicker? All right, sorry about that. So, I'm going to talk shortly about Steel Central, which is the visibility platform that's part of Riverbed, and I'll do a quick demo. So, what is the Riverbed Steel Central platform about? It's about giving you complete visibility from the end user device, through the network, inside the application, through the system, all the way to your data. The advantage there is, again, to give you integrated analytics so that you don't have silos of data that you have to jump through to monitor and diagnose problems with your applications, and enable you to actually collaborate with your colleagues across the IT organization. Not only can we give you the visibility, we can actually give you access to and enable you to control and optimize your applications within Azure. So I'm going to jump quickly into the demo section here in a second. But I want to talk a little bit about how we do that. How do we enable you to actually bring all this data together into the integrated analytics approach that we have. And it looks like the demo has stopped. Yeah, sorry about that. There you go. Short pause. So how do we actually accomplish giving that integrated analytics and visibility? A key concept here is giving you a full transaction path through every single component of your application. Again, user device, network, application, server components, all the way inside the application code to your data. So any point of this transaction can actually become a bottleneck that can be optimized. Whether that you optimize it with design or you optimize it with Steelhead appliances on a network, that's a choice that you have and control that you have. So I'm going to jump into a quick demo here with Steel Central App Internals. It's our agent-based solution that we're certifying with Azure currently. It will be available soon. So what you're seeing here is a quick view of your application. Again, data coming from the end user devices, data coming from your systems, all the way through the application. So quick scenario here is maybe you want to understand who are your top users visiting this particular site or application. Maybe you want to understand how is your infrastructure and systems doing. Do you have a bottleneck inside your transaction paths? Again, applications are more increasingly complex, not only how they're being consumed, but also on the back end. So having that visibility between the front and the back end is key. So the example here that I have in the demo is drill down into a particular transaction type to understand how my users are doing, and immediately spot that my users in India actually experiencing more performance issues than anybody else. So my next question is, well, that's interesting. What can I do about it? How do I diagnose what's happening with my users in India? So I can drill down further. Again, a key principle of the Steel Central platform is big data analytics. Capturing every single transaction, every single packet, understanding that performance characteristics, and using an integrated transaction approach to give you that insight. So every single dot on this view is actually an individual user action that was taken. We've recorded every single thing. Not only do we record every single action and put in the context of a transaction, but we actually have a complete diagnostic record about that particular transaction. So the example I have here is, if somebody reported that they have a problem, in this case, we can see that individual record. We can tell that the majority of the time was actually being spent in a redirect versus something that's happening on the Azure side, right? So at that point, it's not, don't blame the network, don't blame Azure. It's something that the application is doing. It's creating that additional redirect that has to go all the way to the data center back to India. And you can see the transaction topology on the back end within Azure. Maybe you're calling remote web services. Maybe you're calling your data center in a hybrid scenario, but we'll give you that entire transaction path. Example I have further is, again, we record every single action. You can step through the user session and really understand kind of user behavior and what you can optimize. Maybe your CEO is logging to your site and he's having a really poor experience because he's flying on a jet somewhere, right? You want to understand that and being able to do something about it. And the last thing I wanted to highlight, again, is back to that application topology. Not only can we track every transaction through every component of your application, we can actually aggregate that data and give you, here's your application health. What are some of the hotspots? In this case, the application team has decided to host their database on-premise, and they've hosted the app servers in Azure. So that immediately has become a bottleneck inside the application. So it's interesting to be able to measure things, diagnose them, but it's even more interesting if you can do something about it as a network engineer or as a system engineer. And I'm going to transition to Brett to cover how we can actually optimize the user experience.
Thanks. This stuff is amazing. Come down to our booth and take a look at it. It gives you the visibility that you can really only dream of when you deal with the entire network from end to end. Let's see here. We're going to talk about optimizing Azure workloads. Let's get this running. Riverbed is famous for reducing network traffic and improving performance of Microsoft workloads. We've been doing it for a long time. You start with 2 steelheads and you put them on the ends of your networks. And then whatever traffic you send between the steelheads is optimized. And this can be databases, mail, files, all different kinds of materials. You can take your Exchange, your SharePoint files, send them across this network and turn terabytes into gigabytes. This is a steelhead report from an actual customer. Take a look at this kinds of optimizations we're getting with CIFS, MAPI, HTTP, all of this for like one day, 245 gigabytes worth of traffic reduced to 18.4 gigabytes of actual traffic on the wire. That's a 97% reduction in traffic. 97% reduction. And we do that every day for thousands of customers all around the world. Now you can do the same thing with Azure workloads. And this is where it gets really interesting. You can take an on-premise Steelhead and you can pair it with a virtual machine running Steelhead in Azure. You can then optimize these Azure workloads so that you can do HTTP workloads like IIS, SharePoint, moving stuff into blob storage, and you're going to dramatically reduce your bandwidth and improve performance while reducing your costs. When Microsoft heard about this, they said, hey, let's test this with something really new and fun. So we went and did some work with Azure Site Recovery. Here you can see some tests that we did with Azure Site Recovery showing the optimization that we're getting on moving virtual machines into Azure. We're talking 95, 85, 78, 90%. You get the idea. This is a lot of optimization. In fact, they basically said the Steelhead solution exceeded expectations in a variety of scenarios, which is all the scenarios that they tested. You can download this paper still from Microsoft.com downloads. Let's take a look at a completely different situation. Here we've got 2 megabyte network on 60 milliseconds of latency added. This is a SharePoint server in Azure. We're going to download a 13.5 megabyte PowerPoint deck on an unoptimized network. When we click Save, we'll start the timer, and you'll see that this will run about, I believe it's a minute and, 6 seconds. A minute and 6 seconds to download this 14 megabyte file. Now, this is an optimized download. We previously uploaded this through the Azure Steelhead. So the next user downloads this file. How long does it take? We'll take a look. 1 second. 1 second for this 14 megabyte file to come across the wire. Now, what kind of optimization do we get with the Azure Steelhead on this particular download? It looks like about 99%. So we took all of that off the wire, times as many users as you have. This is a significant benefit. Now, generally when people see this, they think this must be some kind of a file cache. We'll take a look at this. We're going to open up this same PowerPoint deck. We're going to browse all the way to the end of it. And when we do, we're going to insert a new slide. And we're going to save this slide. Now, that makes the file bigger, and it changes the digital footprint of the deck. Next, we're going to rename the slide so that this would completely defeat any kind of a file cache system in a traditional sense. We're going to drag and drop it back into the SharePoint library. It's going to go back through the Azure Steelhead and upload into the SharePoint document library. In this case, the upload takes a little bit longer than it does on a download situation, about 35 seconds, which is twice as fast as the download. Now, how much optimization did we get on this? Well, let's take a look. We got about 92% on a modified, renamed file, first time the Steelhead had ever seen this particular file. Now that is significant because it shows that the Steelheads optimize bits and protocols, not files. And that means that we find many, many more cases for optimization than a simple file cache. There's a bunch more to say and show about this technology. So come down to our booth. We're the Application Performance Company, and you can see now that we're also the Azure Application Performance Company. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. And next we have Adam from Checkpoint. Okay, come on up and set up.
All right. Good?
Go ahead.
All right, thanks. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Adam Lasser from Checkpoint. Email address is up there, so if you guys don't have time to stick around after, feel free to send me a note. We've been developing security solutions since the mid-90s. Some of you may know us as the firewall company. The security industry obviously has changed quite a bit over the years, so we provide plenty of other capabilities along the lines of intrusion prevention, network-based anti-malware, data loss prevention, end-user content filtering. So the product has definitely evolved, and we've got security appliances that cover various implementations. So no longer do we just sit on a physical server or appliance within your local data center. Because of the networking and virtualization changes that we've seen, we support Microsoft Hyper-V, we support Azure. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can secure your network-based infrastructure. And some of the things that Yushun mentioned earlier, specifically regarding the user-defined route capabilities. So we've had a virtual appliance for Azure for quite some time. Last fall, they added the capability to have multiple network interfaces on a single appliance. That helped us and gave us greater functionality. But now that you can actually define your own routes, you can do so much more and really get the full capabilities of a Checkpoint security gateway. All right. There we go. OK, so from a protection perspective, now that you've got services both deployed on-premise and in the cloud, you've got another attack vector that you need to protect against. Right? You don't want something to infiltrate your internal network and be able to then infect something that may be in your cloud services. So you've got to protect those communications. You still have to be worried about what actually happens within the cloud and protect those services that are actually in the cloud directly. And if you didn't catch it, pretty slick animation that my marketing team put together there, huh? And then it's not news to anybody that data is the biggest thing, right? Not much time goes by between news reports of 80 million healthcare records lost or credit cards lost. I mean, I bet the majority of you have probably had to replace a credit card at some point because somebody in some foreign country charged something on it, right? So protecting corporate data obviously is a really big thing. So from a Checkpoint perspective, how do we do that? So I mentioned multiple functionalities across the security landscape. Supporting Azure as a deployment environment, and as you can see here, a bunch of checkboxes calling out different security functionalities. You can stand up our virtual appliance within Azure and with the click of a button, check a box to enable new security functionalities. Right? And then as these environments get more and more complex and you've got infrastructure all over the place, you've got multiple locations to manage that. And if we can get to the, there we go. One of the things that Checkpoint does is give you the capability to manage your infrastructure, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud, from the same pane of glass. So a single unified console to configure, to manage, to view logs, to monitor what's going on within your particular environment. So with that, I'm going to jump quickly to a demo here. I want to show you what it actually takes to configure and deploy within Azure. So let me plug in here. All right. So one thing to call out real quick, Our capabilities do exist today within the Azure Marketplace. 2 different licensing arrangements, so you can bring your own license. So if you already have Checkpoint Security Gateway licenses, those will function within a virtual appliance on Azure. And we also have the pay-as-you-go option, right? So all directly integrated with Azure and certified as a partner there, right? So real quick, I want to show you what's here in the environment. So we've got a virtual network. Within this virtual network, we have 3 different subnets defined. So you can go ahead and configure each of these. So we've used just 3 different address spaces on 10.net networks. So you can see those 3 there. When I go back and take a look at the dashboard here, you can see we actually have only 3 virtual machines today, right, in this demo environment. So there's an application server on the back end, there's a web server on the back end, and then there's a checkpoint gateway sitting out on the front end, right? And that checkpoint gateway, we use, we've got certain endpoints defined that allow us to translate the public IP that sits on that gateway to private IP addresses and then use address translation within Azure to translate to those backend servers that are sitting on private IP addresses. So if I go here and I take a look at this, right? So now I'm looking at the actual virtual machine configuration of our security gateway. And if I take a look at these endpoints, so for purposes of just getting a really simple demonstration up and running, a couple of different services. So HTTP, we're allowing in SSH so we can actually get in from the command line, manage the appliance. And then you see a different port there, that 18190, that's the checkpoint management protocol that's going to actually allow us to get in and look at policy. And so now I'm going to go ahead and log into our management console here. And this is actually connecting via the public IP on this gateway and via those endpoints getting translated to the private IP sitting on that checkpoint gateway. Always fun to wait for things to load here. And as it would have it, an hour passes by and the demonstration does not work. So if this, what's that? I'm plugged in by the way. Okay, so in the interest of time, I can show you the live demo later. I'm going to run this in demo mode and show you a couple things that you end up doing. From a policy perspective, when you've got those endpoints defined, as we do here, that's going to translate the public IP address to that particular machine. Now, what we're doing actually in this demonstration environment is we've got that HTTP call. That actually is going to translate via in our checkpoint rule base. So if I show you here what network address translation looks like, basically what we're doing is we're creating an address translation rule within our policy that says take anything that comes into the private IP address of our checkpoint security gateway. And if it's HTTP, we're actually going to translate that to the backend web server and get HTTP there. So if I browse via the web, if I browse here, I should get a copy of a checkpoint website. Basically, we went ahead and took a checkpoint website, copied and pasted it. If I can't connect via the management server, then something's going on with the virtual environment today. But effectively what we're doing is endpoints allow you to translate the public IP address of a gateway sitting out in front of your network infrastructure to the private IP addresses that sit internally. And the fact that now we've got the routing capabilities to route within internal subnets within Azure, you can take your network segmentation strategy from the physical world that you're used to in your data center, separating your users from your application servers, from the database servers, and you can provide the same kind of segmentation capabilities up in Azure. And with that, I'll leave it to the next.
Thank you, Adam. Microphone, please. And next up, we have Cisco coming to showcase CSR 1000V.
Perfect. Can everybody hear me okay? Sounds like it's working. So my name is James Schultz. I am the product manager for a product that we call the Cloud Services Router 1000V. And I was hoping I'd have a demo ready today, but as Yushan mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the routing functionality just came to be available on Azure, so we're working through some final testing there, and we can get some demos set up if anyone's interested in seeing it fairly shortly. So what is the Cloud Services Router 1000V? Otherwise it's called the CSR 1000V. Well, if you're kind of hip to the Cisco lingo, you know we are a big fan of acronyms, and it fits in with the ISR and the ASR series routers. So the ISR 4400 series router and the ASR 1000 series router, both of those run iOS XE, and that's kind of our latest and greatest routing operating system on the routers. And the CSR now is that exact same software platform turned into a virtual appliance. So we essentially took what traditionally is on a hardware routing platform, turned it into a virtual appliance that runs on all the normal hypervisors, and it also runs on a number of different cloud platforms, including Azure now. So we're going through the final testing phases of it on Azure, and we're hoping we'll have it in the marketplace within the next month or so. And it's not really just a routing platform. It encompasses a whole bunch of different network services that are all built into iOS XE. So routing obviously is number one. What we mainly see people using the product for is VPN termination, though. So I'll show you on the coming slides what some of the architectures look like for VPN. But typically we have enterprise customers that are using ISRs and ASRs to build their enterprise networks. Maybe they're a traditional enterprise with lots of different corporate offices. Maybe it's a retail business with lots of different retail locations, hospitality, hotels, those sorts of things. And you've gone through all sorts of different engineering exercises and work to get this enterprise network built and tuned and set up in a way that you can manage it using technologies like DMVPN and all sorts of things that give you any-to-any connectivity. And now if you want to extend some of your applications into a cloud like Microsoft Azure, you don't want to have to go through and re-architect all that stuff, touch all the different sites to make them connect into the cloud. You just want to be able to simply extend your existing design into the cloud, and that's where the CSR comes into the picture. Cool, clicker's working. So really, what we tried to do as a goal here with the CSR is to take the functionality that we had in the iOS XE feature set that everybody is used to for building their enterprise networks and make it available anywhere that you would want to use it. So almost everybody traditionally starts on the left-hand side of this diagram. They have some physical enterprise locations, as I mentioned, office buildings, retail locations, those sorts of things. And they've built this network on Cisco platforms like the ISRs and the ASRs. So we launched the CSR, took that functionality, put it into virtual environments. So if you build private data centers on any of the common hypervisors, you can then use the CSR to bring connectivity from all those physical locations now into those virtualized data centers as well. And then finally, on the right-hand side, we've now taken that same platform and moved it into some of the most popular cloud platforms available in the world today. And we're going to keep expanding that list so that you can really take your existing Cisco infrastructure and your design that you've built with connectivity to all your locations and very easily connect into all these different cloud platforms, including Azure. So really what it looks like is if you're an existing enterprise, clicker work here. Get a little closer. Any luck? So you have your existing enterprise locations, and hooking together all those enterprise locations, you have, come on, an existing enterprise network. So this is the glue that you've built, you've engineered to tie all of your locations together and keep all of your users happy. And now if you're going to be expanding or moving some of your applications into the cloud, come on. There we go. So now we've got Microsoft Azure turned up. You can then just basically expand your existing enterprise network to connect into Microsoft Azure without having to go and touch all of these individual sites, turn up new VPN tunnels. You can do a couple lines of config and reconfigure DMVPN, and all of those sites will automatically have access into the applications that you've moved into Microsoft Azure. And as I mentioned, we'll keep expanding into additional clouds as well so that we can give you the unified connectivity using your existing policies, existing firewall policies for tunnels, existing firewall rules, all the different functionalities that you have configured in iOS XE, you can just expand into whatever cloud provider you choose to expand into. So really, in a nutshell, kind of what the benefits are of taking this approach are you have an IT staff, they understand how to configure Cisco products using iOS. They've gone through all the engineering efforts to build topologies around different routing architectures if they're using dynamic routing protocols, and you've got tons of subnets all over the place. You want to make sure you have cohesive connectivity across all of your sites, across your clouds. You have existing VPN architectures, you have existing firewall rules, all the different features and services that we have built into the CSR. And additionally, the CSR has a container functionality built into it, meaning we have other groups at Cisco that are building containers to put inside the CSR to bring additional security and network services into a single VM that you can then easily deploy into the cloud. So all of these different technologies and features that you've already gone through and trained and learned how to use through the Cisco products, it's going to be familiar when you expand into the cloud using the iOS XE-based platform, the CSR. It's all going to look and feel and work the same. It'll integrate with your existing management tools. You can export flows using NetFlow to do analysis on your traffic. All those standard tools that you're used to are still going to continue to work in Azure as well. So really, that's the benefit of the CSR in a nutshell. And I'll stick around after the presentation if anybody has any specific questions on the platform. And keep an eye on the marketplace. Just do a search for Cisco, and we should pop up there within the next few weeks. We're just going through the last little bit of testing that we need to do, and then we'll be a certified virtual appliance in the Azure marketplace. And with that, I will turn it over to the next presenter.
Thank you, James. So this is the last one. Definitely the last but not the least, Fortinet. We have Chad and Jason from Fortinet. Here, hand it over to you.
Is this on? Well, good morning, folks. I know we're just about out of time. And so for that, it's been a little bit like speed dating. I'm going to run through the front side of what Fortinet's about, and then Jason's going to walk through the demo. Let me go ahead and advance the chart here. Security's awfully topical these days. We all see all the major breaches that have taken place, some of the more enabling ones from Sony, Anthem just recently, Home Depot, and others. It's not just credit card information, right? It's healthcare records. It's employee records. This is very valuable. So we're seeing this continuing to be an ongoing issue that you either have noticed in the marketplace today and has been publicized or non-publicized. What you're seeing here is a capture of our threat map. This is an integrated offering that we have within FortiGuard Labs, which is our in-house threat research about what's taking place. This is showing you where the bad guys are. You're seeing the frequency, and you're seeing the severity of the attacks. This is something that actually takes place and is an offered service that we have throughout all of our customers. As the other folks have talked about earlier in the presentation today, cloud is a big piece of what we're doing at Fortinet. We're already offered out on AWS, and we'll actually be out on Marketplace published both in terms of BYOL in June, followed shortly after with our commerce version. So just a quick things on Fortinet. We have over 220,000 customers. We have 2 million endpoints. That gives us a great swath across the marketplace of what's taking place in our threat research. We're headquartered in Sunnyvale, California. More importantly, we have an integrated security offering across our entire portfolio, so you have a common posture. Whether you have your assets are dedicated in your own facilities or you move them to the cloud, it's all the same OS, same security posture. Okay. What you're seeing off to the right is a bunch of different disparate security solutions. What you get within our VHD that's available within Azure is a unified approach, all integrated, whether it's application control, whether it's antivirus, IPS, all of that is offered as a one solution to cover off these different threats. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Jason. He's going to walk through what the configuration is and a quick demo.
Absolutely, that thing is working now. Thank you. My name, once again, Jason Bandeveris, Product Management for Virtualization Solutions at Fortinet. Only want to spend roughly 35 seconds on my two slides. We wanted to put this one up there first, kind of use it as a visual representation of what your security infrastructure could look like within Azure, and it probably should look very familiar to some of you because I'd like to think some of that is also within your core environment, your data centers, right? It could be obviously the core firewalling technology and advanced security pieces of that, but you're also going to be utilizing centralized management, central reporting, analytics, reporting, strong authentication, application delivery, right, as well as some point security solutions like WAFs, web application firewalls, anti-spam gateways, advanced threat protection, doing some sandboxing along those lines. But we're specifically, what we're launching here into the Azure environment and what we're going to attempt to do a walkthrough and demo of is specifically our Fortinet flagship solution, and that is the FortiGate VM. So let me try to bring this up. Outstanding. So, well, actually, let me log in because it's much more beautiful when you log in. Is there anybody here familiar with Fortinet before I get going or doing any day-to-day administration? Okay, so at least there was a couple arms up besides mine. This screen should look very familiar to you, right? So Fortinet owns the operating system as well as the application, right? We're not just installing on some base OS. We've actually built our own FortiOS, right? Fortinet operating system, so we are able to optimize the OS with the application and be able to deploy this out there. You should also, if you're familiar with Fortinet, find this screen very familiar because it's the exact same operating system and application that is running in your FortiGate hardware appliances, that are running in your FortiGate virtual appliances that we launched back in 2010. As well as if you're running it within your Hyper-V environment, right? All of those are the same exact operating system and application that are going to be running within the FortiGate VM in the Azure cloud, right? So just, the dashboard here is very customizable. It's kind of the state of affairs of what you're first looking at when you roll in. It's full of just basic information, widgets. You can actually be very customizable. I can sit here and add widgets into the environment. I can move them around so they're better fit for what I'm looking at, right? So very straightforward, very easy, very customizable by you. Now, what I'm going to be going through here is walking through just this interface that's logging into FortiGate VM itself, but we also have the centralized management. So one of our peers had already mentioned single pane of glass management, and that's also the case here, right? You can take that one centralized manager and be able to manage your policy, whether it's in the cloud with the FortiGate VM for Azure, whether it's in your main data center with your core FortiGate hardware devices, or out in your branch and remote offices for other FortiGate hardware devices, remote office devices, or virtual appliances. Now, as I'm talking about these widgets, I want to show you specifically here, this one here. Right, these are the features of FortiGate VM. It's not just a firewall, but it has all the advanced features that you're going to be looking for, right? IPS, AV, application control, DLP, as well as URL filtering. And I also want to highlight how easy it is just to enable these features, right? I don't have to go through any advanced CLI commands, right? All I have to do if I want to turn on email filtering is click on and hit apply, right? And now it's enabled within that environment. Now, taking a step further from that, I can now set up very granular security policies. So you can see on the left, I got AV, IPS, etc., and we have a lot of default policies that come with this. Like if I was to look at intrusion prevention here, you can see I have a few default policies already set up that come with the basic environment. But let's say I want to make my own, right? So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to set up a specific AV policy called Azure Test. I want it to be Azure Test 2. I guess I had already set that up before. I want to set it up as proxy as opposed to flow-based. I want to set it up just for HTTP and just for FTP. And it's as simple as that, as well as setting up the other ones. Now, these security profiles, once again, can be as granular as you want them to be, or they can be default policies. You also have the capabilities to use them in multiple security policies, right? So let me take the next step over and take a look at our security policy that we have within this environment, right? So we have a few rule sets in there. Let's say I want to highlight this guy and I want to add my new AV policy. All I got to do is right-click, select policy, Azure Test 2, done, right? I want to add application control, right? So I can easily do that, block point to point. But another thing I want to mention on these policies, once again, they can be general or they can be very granular, right? So from a granular standpoint, it doesn't have to be just a IP-based policy or an object-based policy. I can set them up on users. Now, this being a Microsoft conference, right, I can literally integrate this thing with Active Directory and then base my policies on Active Directory users or user groups. So I can sit here and drill down and say I want to do this for my guest group. And you know what? I only want to set up this policy for mobile devices, right? So once again, very flexible and easy for you to set up these extremely granular policies. Now let me roll down. I'm going to cancel out of that and come back to our main policy page. I also want to hit on very briefly, just I don't want to hammer it in because the Cisco gentleman right before me had talked about it, but once again, and Yu Shun had also brought it up, right? Azure Portal, you can set up site-to-site VPNs, but when deploying a FortiGate VM within your Azure environment, now I can set up a full hub-and-spoke site-to-site VPN setup to my remote offices, my branch offices, my DC, all going in and out of here, and having it terminate directly on the FortiGate VM itself, as opposed through the general Azure IPsec point. Now, and I'm almost done, one more thing. Just to kind of prove that I'm not just going through the screens here, I had set up a RDP session, which hopefully you guys wouldn't do, to my back end. So I actually have a Windows 12 server in the back. And I am going to attempt to download a file that is infected. Everybody should be familiar with iCarrier. Download. Now it should pop up and give me my warning now that, hey, you're trying to download an infected file. Don't do that, right? And it does it automatically blocked. So the full devices, as Chad was mentioning, we're constantly updating our databases through our fully FortiGuard deployment network, as well as updating this. So we should probably be out on the marketplace very soon, and I'm about done. Actually, I am done. Absolutely, I'm done. I do want to mention only one more thing. Yes, we're going to be here. We're going to take your questions. A small core of our group is here. You can also have any questions at Fortinet.com or send an email to Azure@Fortinet.com. And we got a larger group of folks there that we can hit up and set you up for evals, whatever you'd like to do. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so really want to thank all the partners for getting this ready in such a short notice. Oops, let me just go back to my last slide. So basically, here's the message we want to highlight. I mean, I can go through the summary, but it's that we are building out the ecosystem. And if you don't, these are the list of partners that are either currently available on Azure Marketplace, or for some of the partners that like you are seeing today that we've been working with very closely. So one thing is, if you actually have appliance or the vendors that you are using on premises that you don't see either in the marketplace or not on the slides that we're currently working with, please contact us, let us know. It's not that they have to go through us to be onboarded, right? So kind of from the product side of things, we're more like consultant, like helping partners to get onboarded. And because running in Azure is slightly different than running on premises, some layer 2, layer 3 functionality, there will be some differences. But by all means, if you see a vendor that's not listed, you cannot find it, do let us know, and we'll reach out to the vendors and we'll start working with them to help them onboard to Azure. And one other thing. the message coming from customers like you will be much, much stronger than coming from me, from Microsoft, to say, hey, we actually have customer requests. So by all means, please talk to your vendors and then talk to your contact in the partner ecosystem and let them know you want their appliances on Azure, and we can get that started. With that, I'm going to open up the floor up for questions. And all the partners will be here. Feel free to come up and ask them questions directly. With that, thank you very much.